Hey guys, how are you all doing? Let's take a look at the Playtest 6 Glossary. We'll also touch on feats and weapons real quickly in this review. So we have a new interesting twist on the feat ability score improvement. All classes would get ability score improvements. See if I can find the Barbarian. Yeah, ability score improvement here. And they were limited to 20 with an ability score improvement usage. Now at 19th level, the limit increases to 22. Another change with this updated playtest is to get any of the fighting style feats, you have to have the prerequisite of a fighting style feature. This is just mimicking what was built into classes, so nothing new there. Back to interposing your shield as a reaction with the fighting style protection. Now, on to weapons. One note, DMs oversee what is available for purchase in shops because in this list of weapons, they have muskets and pistols. The weapon tables have masteries, and this is all the same as the last playtest. There's some changes with the lance doing a little bit less damage, short swords, martial, tridents doing more damage, war pick can be versatile, and musket and pistol show up here. And then every weapon has their mastery. The masteries are unchanged from the last playtest. Also, weapon properties for the light property and for the thrown property appear here under the weapons. And the light one, when you take the attack action on your turn, you get one extra attack as a bonus action later on the same turn with a different light weapon. And this is adjusted if you have a certain weapon property. What is that one called? It is called Vex. Nope. It's called, what is it, Nick? Yeah, Nick, okay. When you make the extra attack of the light property, you can make it as part of the attack action instead of as a bonus action once per turn. Thrown. So with the oh, this is interesting. So, okay. Yeah, okay. Thrown. If the weapon has the thrown property, you can draw the weapon as part of the attack. Weapon mastery properties. Now you can add new properties to weapons, but they always have to follow the prerequisite. So the basic weapons have the listed mastery, and some classes, such as high-level fighters, can add other masteries to weapons. So these are all unchanged from the last playtest. I won't hit them too hard. Cleave does some extra damage on a hit. Flex deals versatile damage. Graze, even with one hand. Graze does extra damage on a miss. Nick lets you do the offhand attack as free instead of bonus. Push is still a little overpowered. If you hit, you push them 10 feet. Sap is if you hit, you give them disadvantage on the next attack roll. Slow's got a little wording problem here where it's if you hit him, you slow him down by 10 feet and it can't stack. But if other people do, apparently it can stack the way it's written. Topple, this is, I think, going to be annoying because every hit you make makes a saving throw or they get knocked prone. And then finally, Vex. If you hit a creature, you deal damage, you have advantage on the next attack before the end of your next turn. That's really strong. Then we have in Adventuring Gear, the net. One of the commenters on my YouTube channel pointed out that this is replacing one of the attacks. Is it considered an attack, though? You're not making an attack roll, and the target's the saving throw. So with this trip, something like an invisibility. Obviously, that's a exploit that I would fix in my home game, but I'm not sure how the intent is there with the rules as written. Then we come into the glossary. So rules glossary. The stuff on armor training is pretty much unchanged, except you don't gain the armor class bonus of a shield unless you have armor training and a shield. And then in the attack, equipping and unequipping weapons, you can either equip or unequip one weapon when you make an attack as part of the action. You don't need to use it for that attack. So we looked at net already. Oh, another thing about net that changed is that rather than needing to do slashing damage to destroy the net, you can do any damage. It's just immune to bludgeoning, poison, and psychic, like other objects are, plus bludgeoning that most objects aren't immune to. Then we come into the attacks. And the shield. I did not see anywhere in armor where proficiency with a shield in the current system, what it even does. Yeah, it doesn't seem to shield, benefit for one at a time, increases your armor class. I think it was just assumed that it helped you with armor class. But there's nothing about if you're trained in it or not. So that's fixed in the new playtest. Okay, equipping and unequipping weapons. So this comes in actions on your turn, other activity on your turn. Currently, by the rules, you could draw your weapon as part of the same action used to attack. You can do like one free interaction. Now it's every time you attack, you can do a free interaction. And what does equipping mean? Equipping means drawing it, picking it up, or retrieving it from a container. And unequipping means sheathing, stowing, or dropping. Now, dropping is always free, so not sure the intent there. Move between attacks, no change. Blind sight. Let's look at the blind sight. Can perceive its surroundings without relying on sight. So interesting wording change here. They can see their surroundings. So any spell that requires you to see the target, blind sight would work for. They see within a specific range without relying on physical sight. They effectively see anything that's not behind total cover. They can effectively see a creature that has invisible condition. So that's blind sight. Climb speed, no big difference. Creature type, no big difference. D20 test. I don't think there was ever like a way this was described in the current rules, but any ability check, attack roll, and saving throw is a D20 test. Dazed is a new condition that came from Turn Undead, as one of my commenters noted, but Turn Undead doesn't use Dazed anymore, so we'll see what Dazed sticks around for, if anything. With the Dazed, you can either move or take one action on your turn, but not both, and you can't do bonus or reactions. So good for something like a slow spell or something like that, too. Death saving throws. So this, I think, is the same as the last playtest, and if we look at death saving throws currently, when you make your third saving throw, where's that? On your third failure, you die. 120, damage is 0, stabilizing. Where is the third success? Right here. So on your third success, you become stable, see below, stabilizing. A stable creature doesn't make a death saves. It has 0 hit points, but it remains unconscious. So they fixed that. Third successful death save, you now go to 1 hit point. You are unconscious. You start a short rest. You remain unconscious until you regain hit points, which you would at the end of a short rest. If you can spend as many hit dice as you want at the end of a short rest. Otherwise, the person can administer first aid to you to bring you back to consciousness. Then, difficult terrain, pretty much unchanged from before, except for if you're moving through the space of a tiny creature, it doesn't take any extra movement. Now, I would think you'd want that to be a vice versa too. Tiny going through any size creature would be no extra movement. Doesn't say that though. This is new that you can move through your allies without it being difficult terrain. Then expertise is pretty much unchanged. Fly speed, just a small tweak on the fly speed. We see here that you fall if you lack the hover trait or have the incapacitated or prone condition, or your fly speed is reduced to 0. And it used to be, if your speed was reduced to 0, otherwise deprived of the ability to move. Right now, that's just defined as incapacitated in the new rules. Then we come to grappled. Grappling rules. So the grappling condition, let's look at the condition actually. We'll come back to the rules in a minute with the unarmed strikes. So grappling rules. Disadvantage is new. You have disadvantage on attack rolls against any target other than your grappler. You can drag a creature unless you are tiny or 2 or more sizes smaller. I think, the vice versa, tiny should be able to drag tiny, right? You would think. Then the help action used to be able to, when you take the help action, you gain advantage on the next ability check. The person you're helping gains advantage on the next check they're making to perform a task you're helping them with. Changes. Now it's one of your skill or tool proficiencies, since you can only help with something you're proficient in. And an ally who can perceive you can help. You must be near enough for them to assist verbally or physically. Then the assisting attack roll. You can aid a friendly creature in attacking a creature within 5 feet of you. You feint, distract the target, or some other way. Team up to make your ally's attack more effective. And if your ally attacks the target before your next turn, the first attack roll is made with advantage. So never specified did you have to declare which ally. And I always played it that you did, but they're clarifying now in the new rules that it's the next attack roll by one of your allies. So you don't have to specify which ally you're helping. You're really just distracting the target is what you're doing. And it's the very next ally to make the attack. So That's the change there. Then we come to heroic advantage. This one's a little wonky, and it comes from the way everyone plays the game, but just bowing to how it's done doesn't necessarily make for good rules. So they need to look at this one a little bit more carefully, I think. It's been acting weird as we play test it. So they make it so that you can decide to do so immediately after rolling the d20. But what do you do if you had disadvantage and you're rolling 2? So you roll 2d20, then you decide you want to use your heroic advantage right after the roll. Do you randomly discard one of those two? Do you re-roll? What do you do in that case? They need to clarify that a little better. Then it used to be that you can give your inspiration. If you have inspiration, you can reward another player for good role playing, clever thinking, or doing something exciting in the game. This was being used basically as a bank where one inspiration was usable by anyone in the party, when it was needed. And that wasn't, I think, the intent of how it was used, but now they've clarified there's really no way to do that. But if something gives you inspiration, you already have it, you can give it to another player. There's no way to give it to them just randomly during the game by that rule, which I think is a good thing. Okay, hide as an action. So hiding used to be covered under using ability scores. There's this box about hiding here. Now you make a DC 15 dexterity stealth check while you're heavily obscured or behind 3/4 cover, out of any visible enemy's line of sight. Interesting that you have to have a certain number for it to count. So if you roll a 12, you're not hidden. No one needs to make a perception check to see you. But if you roll 15 or higher, you are, but you do then keep track of what you rolled, because that will be used by other creatures to perceive you. You have the invisible condition, which is interesting. And interestingly, you can cast a spell without a verbal component and not give away your location. Then we come to incapacitated the condition. Here's invisible, here's incapacitated. An incapacitated creature can't take actions or reactions. So now it adds to that bonus action. Concentration is broken. And it used to be if you couldn't take actions, you couldn't concentrate. So that was kind of built in and it was hidden away in the rules under spellcasting. But now it's right up front there. Can't speak. It didn't say you couldn't speak before, so that's a new thing. Can't speak. And surprised, if you're incapacitated when you roll initiative, you have disadvantage on the roll. So that's also a new thing. Then we come to influence. Now, influence was basically just handled as a charisma check. And there's no real guidance for how you did it. It's really just between you and the DM or you and the adventure as written for how you would use charisma to influence others. Now it's got hard coding here. It has all these caveats that is written into a DM determines when it's available, can only be used on creatures controlled by the DM, not mind control, can't force a creature to do something that's counter to the creature's alignment, or is otherwise repugnant to the creature. So basically, you can use it when the DM thinks you can use it. Each creature is either indifferent, friendly, or hostile, and you can interact with them as your action to try and adjust their outlook against you. And if you do successfully, you might move it up one notch, and unsuccessfully, you might move it down one notch. Then you make a charisma check using the appropriate charisma ability. And they have some examples here of what those might be. Animal handling, interestingly, I don't know if that's going to be a charisma check now, or if it is currently a wisdom check. Deception, intimidation, persuasion. There's no performance to influence. It'd be interesting, they should add that probably. So then the DM sets the DC of 15 usually, or the creature's intelligence or wisdom score, whichever is higher of the three, and then you roll. And if your check fails, you have to wait. And the default time is 24 hours to wait. Now, if you're making this check against a friendly creature, you'll have advantage. Against a hostile creature, you'll have disadvantage. All right, then to invisibility. Here's invisible. The condition now, concealed. You aren't affected by any effect that requires a target to be seen. So that's kind of, well, if a creature can somehow see you, as with magic or blind sight, you don't gain this benefit against that creature. Attack rolls against you have disadvantage, and your attack rolls have advantage. I think they need to work on the wording here. I think there's the corner case, not necessarily even corner case, of spells. So a spell, you can see them but it's saying that because they have this invisible condition, they aren't affected by any effect that requires its target to be seen. So just watch out for how those things interact. What does blind sight say about invisible condition? Let's see here. Blind sight can effectively see a creature that has the invisible condition. Okay, they just need to tighten up the wording back and forth between those two. They don't want to give the impression that blind sight doesn't overrule invisible, which it kind of gives that impression right there. Okay, if you're invisible when you roll initiative, you have advantage. Invisible to everyone. How many people do you need to be invisible to? So they need to clean that up a little bit. If you are invisible, what if 9 enemies can see you and 1 can't see you? Do you get advantage? That would be, I think, a little overkill. So I'd say adjust that in their next revision of the rule write-up. Knocking out a creature. So there's a new little thing with knocking out a creature here. Let's see. When they went to 0, they went to 0. Now they're going to 1. They're starting a short rest right away, so in an hour they'll be conscious again with potentially all their hit points. And they remain unconscious until they regain hit points or until someone uses an action to administer first aid. So here we go. Here you have first aid usage that wasn't originally in the books. Long rest, next item here. Pretty much the same as before. You're unconscious during it. You have to have at least a hit point to start it. You had to have that before. You didn't really have to have a hit point to start it, but you had to have a hit point to gain the benefits of it. Now you have to have a hit point to even start. And then you regain all hit dice. You only used to get half your hit dice back. Max hit points restored, max ability scores are restored, exhaustion goes down 1. They just listed all the things that are usually listed in other locations. And then rather than 1 long rest for 24 hours, you have to wait 16 hours before starting another one after you finish long rest. It can be interrupted by any of these 4 things. If it's interrupted by, if you get at least an hour, you get the benefits of a short rest. So if you're 2 hours into your rest and you're woken up by combat, can you immediately roll all your hit dice you want to roll? I think so. And then you can resume it after the interruption. Did you used to be able to resume it? I don't think you could resume it. You must begin the rest again. Yeah, so that's a new thing. The magic action, always a weird way of wording things. You magic something. There was really no, quote, magic action. There was casting a spell actions, and there was using an object actions. And magic items, you would use an object, usually, or cast a spell. So that's new. Movement. Tiny creature. Okay, so during your move, let's see. So movement here. During your move, you can pass through the space of an ally, a creature that has the incapacity condition, a tiny creature, or a creature who is 2 sizes larger or smaller than you. So that's that weird case where small can go through tiny, but tiny can't go through small. So I think they should fix that. So it's either way when you're tiny. You can't willingly end your move in a space occupied by another creature. I don't think that used to be a rule. I think you used to pass through large, like a gargantuan creature and end in its space before. Let's see if it says that. So here it is under moving around other creatures in chapter 9, and I was wrong. Whether a creature is a friend or an enemy, you can't willingly end your move in its space, no matter what the difference in size is. I did not know that. Okay. Changes to your speeds. So that's actually not a new thing. In effect, increase or decrease your speed for time. It does the same thing to all your special speeds. Ritual casting. A special feature is no longer required for ritual casting. Search action. You can do a medicine skill check to search a creature's alignment. That's a new use that I didn't know about. Short rest. Benefits of a short rest. Here we go. You start a short rest, you have to have at least a hit point. You regain hit points equal to the total minimum of 1. It used to be a minimum of 0. Some features are recharged by a short rest, interrupted by these 3 things, and you have to start it over if it's interrupted. So that's a short rest. The study action. This used to be potentially under knowledge history checks, intelligence checks. So now you're making an intelligence check, and they have these, different creatures, what intelligence checks they'd be under. Interestingly, dragons are under nature, not arcana. And elementals are under arcana, not nature. A few things that you wouldn't necessarily guess. Then we have telepathy. A creature has to be able to understand at least one language to hear you telepathically. Or it has to be telepathic itself. So that's a new thing. No action required to start or stop it. That was already in there. Otherwise, pretty much the same. Teleportation. Nothing new there, I don't think. Tool proficiencies, using the tool proficiencies from Xanathar's, where if you're proficient with the tool and the skill, you have advantage on the check. Tremor Sense. Tremor Sense spells out, used to be with the same ground or substance. Now it is the same ground or liquid. And so specifically, they tried to clarify that air doesn't work in air. And it does spell that out specifically also in the second paragraph. And they specifically say this does not count as a form of sight. So a spell requiring you to see a creature would work through blind sight, would not work through tremor sense. True sight, they added in the effect of what happens when you can, let's see, senses, true sight. What you see with illusions. Visual illusions appear transparent to you. Unarmed strike. So this is going to have all the grapple rules in it. Let's see if I find grappling here. Grapple. Make an attack. Here we go. Grappling. Also shoving is covered here. Also unarmed strikes is covered here, which is right up there. So there's all kind of like, unarmed strike was definitely buried in the rules under melee attacks. And then grappling and shoving were also these big sections here. So that's all boiled down into just this now, which is nice. An armed strike you use to do any of those things. And then a grapple check, rather than being your athletics versus their athletics or acrobatics, it's just your strength modifier versus their, and your proficiency bonus. Okay, so basically it's assuming or giving you the same benefit as if you were trained in athletics. And then they're making a saving throw, which often doesn't gain that modifier unless they're a fighter or a rogue. A lot of creatures don't have those modifiers. So it's going to be a little bit easier to grapple things now. And then shove is the same thing versus strength or dex save they choose. And then finally, unconscious condition. Look at that. The only difference here is they specify your speed 0. They don't talk about being able to speak. That's not on here at all. I think it's, though, you are incapacitated, which they added that you can't speak to. Invisible, incapacitated, speechless, can't speak. Okay. So that kind of rolled into incapacitated, which is a subset of unconscious. And that is the glossary changes. That's Player's Handbook, Playtest 6. I think we've seen now every class at least once. It'll be interesting to see if we see a complete release of the Player's Handbook Playtest with all the final classes in it, maybe one last time for one last review by us, or if we'll just jump right into the DMG or the Monster Manual with the next playtest. Check it out. I'll definitely do videos when those come out, and thanks for watching, guys.